Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Audit and Administration Committee meetings for May 23rd, 2024. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Legislator Elner, if you could lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If we could have roll call.
Legislator Goulman, Legislator Elner,
Here.
Chairman Castellano.
Present. Thank you. Okay, item number 3 is the acceptance of minutes from the April 29, 2024 meeting. If there's any objections, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 4 is correspondence from the county auditor. 4A is the sales tax report. This, again, is an FYI we get every month. Sales tax, again, dropped a little bit from this point in the previous year. Mr. Lewis, I know we had spoken about the
Correct.
clothing and footwear exemption that we had.
Yeah, so I guess what I'd like to clear is, in total, as of now, we're still up $216,000. We're trending, we're trending the right way. Our budget is $77.5 million. There's a lot of factors that go into why the fluctuation goes up and down. I reached out to the Department of Taxation and Finance, and in regards to what our initiative is, they have to, the vendors will file quarterly returns. So the earliest I would be able to get you a true number is probably in July, because it'll go through their quarterly, which is, if I'm reading this correctly, is through May 31st. They have until June 20th to do that specific filing for the exemption, and we wouldn't get the final reconciled payment until mid-July. So once we start hitting mid-July, then on a quarterly basis, we'll be able to, start, tracking that specific, portion. So and that's they do it separately. That's a separate report from all the other, industries, the car industry, the gas, et cetera. So I just wanted to clarify that, because in last month's newsletter, if you want to say, in the Putnam Courier, it went down 310,000. That had nothing to do with the direct result of the exemption.
Legislator Elmer.
Mike, would you know offhand if gasoline prices for this period are actually less than they were last year? Because I believe they are, and that is a significant source of sales tax.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
if gas
actually,
is lower, we're going to collect less.
correct. Actually, I printed out the OSC report, and it's all driven on inflation, consumption. So there's all different facts, CPI. So that's part of the reason. But I mean, all in all. They said something to the effect that 31 out of 57 counties are pretty much in our boat. So they're going back to pretty much pre-pandemic for now.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Legislator Nasreen.
So basically, the Department of Taxation is not straight line funding, so we can't cost average and make that prediction.
Yeah, I mean, so that, like I said, they will give you. There's so many different factors,
Right.
It's a very.
But we have a straight line budget, and they don't,
Correct.
so it's more
Correct.
fluid and it's susceptible.
Right, and their taxable periods are different than our.
Different calendars
Correct.
and things like that. Yeah, okay.
Legislator Sage.
And that's part of the reason that we voted to have this exemption for a 2-year period, so we could understand what the impact is over a 1-year
Correct.
period, so that, because it's lagging, so that's how we get a clearer picture to see what the impact will be.
Correct. So even though we got, through May 12th of, cash distributions, that's a factor of estimates, that's a factor of other industries, that are reporting on a monthly basis versus a quarterly basis. So for this particular exemption, it's quarterly. So that's why there's a time, so the earliest would probably be July, would be the the final payment that we would get, and then I'd be able to report then.
It all averages out
Yeah.
at the end of the year.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we're still trending, you
We're
know,
targeting 80 million from, after 1/3 of the year,
Pretty
so we're
much, yeah.
above what we projected, or
Correct.
what we budgeted, which is.
Correct, and that's why we were conservative by only going up, you know, shy of $3 million. We just wanted to just be conservative, and if we, you know, we hit our target, then we'll adjust the budget up accordingly.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? That's, again, just an FYI. We'll move on to 4B is the transfer revenue report. Again, just an FYI, if anybody has any questions or comments. And moving on to 4C is the 2024 contingency, sub-contingency report. As you can see, we have a couple proposed deductions in front of us this month. Again, just an FYI if anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, let's move on to item number 5, since we have the Commissioner of Finance all ready to go. We have 5A, which is the overtime temporary report we get every month. Again, just an FYI, pretty straightforward this month, I don't see any urgency there. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. 5B is the approval of a budgetary amendment for planning, development, and public transportation, the community resilience economic. This is a grant that's in front of us to design and install a small solar carport to be located at the Donald B. Smith campus. Also reviewed in physical services earlier this month. It's $100,000 state aid that we're getting to do this project, which I think is fantastic, and if we can tap into some solar energy and have the ability to refurbish, get energy to these electric vehicles that we may have in the future. Seems in the right direction to go. County's portion is just $15,284. You have anything you'd like to
Yeah,
add?
that's pretty much well said.
One quick thing.
Yes, sir.
The way everything is structured, that until we get the vehicles, we actually can sell that energy back to the grid.
Right, which would be fantastic. It does say small. I'm just kind of curious about what size it was exactly. Do we have any idea? It's only for 3 to 4 EV charging stations.
And those are dual charging stations.
I'm familiar with the town of Mount Pleasant has something like this that I drive by every once in a while. It seems like a good use of space, and it's a perfect location. And if we can get something back for it, I think it's fantastic. Again, it's state aid that's going to pay the majority of this.
State was 25 kilowatts, but not dimensions.
Any questions or comments from any of the legislators, public? Okay, I'll make a motion to move this to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 5C is the approval of a budgetary amendment for BES, the Fire Training Center, also reviewed in Protective Services earlier this month. Obviously, we had an additional cost that was not accounted for, and they're back for a bit more money. Unfortunately, we've located the money from federal and state aid, the $300,000, $100,000 coming from federal aid, $200,000 coming from state aid, which will help us with this project. It's a great thing for Putnam County, a great thing for Bureau of Emergency Services. I know we've spoken about it for the last couple of years, and looking forward to seeing this project come through. Questions or comments? Any of the legislators, public, Legislator Nestorino?
Yeah, this is for the outsourcing of the demolition, because the Department of Public Works deemed it unsafe for them to handle this, and it's, really something that they should not be handling it. So they will be outsourcing, and $300,000 will cover that expenditure.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else with a question, comment? I'll make a motion to move it to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5D is the approval of budgetary amendment for the Department of Public Works to amend the 2024 CHIPS County Capital Project budget to equal what was adopted by the New York State budget, reviewed in fiscal services earlier this month. Again, this is a bookkeeping issue as we got more money than we had budgeted, so we're gonna put it in the appropriate category, $735,692.
This is just the excess, you know, we conservatively, we put in $1.2 million. When we adopt the budget over the last, you know, all the historical years, there was actually that Deputy Commissioner Bellucci had talked about potentially they were gonna lose funding. They went up to Albany, they were able to, you know, advocate and get it back. So it's pretty much the same level funding, so we're up to 1.9 million.
Thank you. Any other comments, legislators, questions? Okay, I'll make a motion to move this to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 5E is the approval of budgetary amendment for the Sheriff's Youth and Community Services Division to purchase one Project Lifesaver bracelet. This is incoming money. It's a donation from I'm assuming a local attorney. Yes, Howard Stern, who happens to be from Westchester County. As we heard last week, was it, or earlier this week, actually? He actually likes the project and wanted to make a donation, and we certainly appreciate that, in the amount of $300 to help cover the purchase of a bracelet for this great program that the Sheriff's Department is running. Open it up to any questions or comments? Okay. I'll make a motion to move this to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to 5F is the approval of budgetary amendment for Department of Public Works, guardrail damage compensation. This is 3 separate accidents which resulted in guardrail damage on county roads, reviewed in fiscal services. Incoming money from the insurance companies. We can thank Mr. Bruno out there for the great work here, getting $21,621.43 back to the county to cover some of the costs for the damage.
I believe this is the one that we just got today, right, Matt?
Oh, no, the one we got today is for 23,000. This was earlier. 23,000 was for the vehicle, 21 is for property, essentially property. Yeah.
Okay, great work, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from any of the legislators or public? Okay, I will make a motion to move this to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5G is the approval of budgetary amendment for the historian office outside donation. G. Whipple via the Society of Preservations and Putnam County Antiquities and Greenway Incorporated, also reviewed in Health earlier this month. It's an outside donation in the amount of $1,500 to cover the cost for a Civil War memorial plaque to be placed at the Putnam County Veterans Memorial Park, which is an incredible property owned and operated here by us in Putnam County. I'd like to be the first person, if not the first person, to thank this foundation that did this. There's incredible rich history in Putnam County, even with the Civil War. So I'm very excited to see this come to fruition. It's going to be a very nice addition to the park. Any questions or comments from any of the legislators or the public? Legislator Sage.
Just the fact this is for a Civil War veteran called Frank Myers, who was born in Patterson and lived in Southeast. They're going to present this plaque at June 19th for the Juneteenth ceremony at Veterans Memorial Park. He was a member of the Massachusetts 54th, and he fought during the Civil War, so it's a very interesting history, and I'm very pleased to see this plaque.
Yep, thank you. Any other legislators? Questions or comments? I know Jen Cassidy's daughter did a lot of research on this as well, that this person was lost to history because they thought he was from Paterson, New Jersey, as opposed to Paterson, New York. So fantastic job by the Cassidy family. I just like to point that out as well. But looking forward to this coming to fruition. And other questions or comments? I will make a motion to move this to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 5H is the approval of budgetary amendment for the Sheriff's Department to stop DWI Foundation Incorporated reimbursement. This was also reviewed in physical services. Oh, I'm sorry, this was reviewed in protective services earlier this week. This is incoming money to Putnam County, in the amount of $595.22, which we will place in the correct category for the Sheriff's Department. Again, this is the New York State Stop DWI money, again, incoming money to us here in Putnam. Questions or comments on this one? I'll make a motion to move it to the full. Or a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 5 ayes, the approval of budgetary amendment for finance, the ARPA administration costs, moving some money around. Mike, you want to talk about this one a little bit?
So this is a direct result of what I've been talking about in the last couple of rules meetings, but you've seen some proposed projects, from our towns and our villages. Our ARPA consultant is, pretty much, I don't want to say full-time, but she's, her and her team are they're more involved in our process. And with that said, with the U.S. Treasury guidelines, you can have up to 10% of our total allocation to go towards administrative costs. So for conservatively from now until the end of this year to get everybody in compliance for the December 31st, 2024 deadline, we feel that that $70,000 is appropriate to keep this moving in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions? I will make a motion to move this to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 5J is the approval of budgetary amendment for the Sheriff's Department, the use of T Commissioner funds for laptops and for the correctional facilities. This is also reviewed in protective services. This is the inmate T-comp use money that we can use for purchasing computer equipment for the facility. It's in the amount of $4,613.35 to purchase 5 laptop computers. Any discussion?
Is this just for signature?
Is it, no, this is gonna go to the full.
Okay.
Legislator Crowley.
I just want to ask why these weren't budgeted for in the beginning of the year,
Well,
when everybody did their computers.
well, this is money that is coming out of this fund that I
Fund,
believe it
right.
comes from.
It's a trust fund. It's a trust fund.
Right.
And this is
Yeah, the
this
phone
is a
call.
standard every single year. They can take from that fund.
So these are being used by the inmates, these laptops?
It's T.
For the chair, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's to the benefit for the inmates. And again, this I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this is when they're using the phone system and obviously using our property, we get a percentage back from the collect calls that they send out. And it's to the benefit of the inmates for this, and I'm sure it was approved through the process here as appropriately used money. And it's not costing the taxpayers anything. Yes,
From what
Legislator
the
Sage.
chair discussed at Protective, correct me if I'm wrong, that we are responsible by law to provide internet services for the inmates, and this is a part of that law, that we have to provide inmates.
Through the chair,
Yes.
that's correct.
Okay. Sheriff, would you like to add anything to this purchase, or?
There's no fiscal impact on the county or our budget. It's a prudent use of the funds that we collect.
Okay, thank you. Legislator Crowley?
How often do we buy new computers for the inmates? Sorry.
If, through the chair, when a computer fails or becomes disabled, then we look to replace that system.
Okay, so there's no like federal no state mandate on how often they get new computers? Thank you.
Legislator Nasser?
So this is at the discretion, these are discretionary funds at the discretion of the sheriff, and the monies that are collected are returned for the welfare of the inmates. And just for record, we approve computers all year long. We do have an inventory control and their shelf life and really try to stick to that, but, that's not really the case. I think we just approved a computer for OSR last month. if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. Legislator Yaki?
And just as a reminder, the previous sheriff used to use these funds and the commissary funds to stockpile microwave ovens, televisions, and for the good of the inmates. So this is not something that's new or unusual.
Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments from anyone? All right, I think this is appropriate use of the funds, and no issues at all. 5 new laptop computers to be purchased. I will make a motion to move this to the full. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to 5K is the approval of budgetary amendment also for the Sheriff's Department, use of T-Commission funds for 2 network video recorders, also reviewed in protective services earlier this month. This is in the amount of $205,146.11 of this revenue coming into bring this project to fruition here. I'll open it up for any discussion, questions. Okay. I'll make a motion to move this to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number 6 is the approval of a transfer for the District Attorney's Office, compensation for the District Attorney's Office for, in New York State, also reviewed in personnel. The District Attorney's Office salary is set by the state, and we have to come up with some money out of contingency, in the amount of $22,499 to bring him up to the appropriate salary level for 2024. Mike,
I-
talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah, I also, based on a memo to myself, Legislator Nasarino and Chairman Yonke had asked me to look into it. I reached out to our NISAC officials, and they pretty much said the same thing that I think you guys said on record, that the formula is set by the state. It's set by the state, sets a floor for the county judge and the DA salary. So those are two, they're pretty much equal. But then I think at some point in time, it's possible that, and I don't know, this predates me, that it might have been incrementally higher than the actual county judge. And maybe that's the reason why it might be slightly higher than all those other counties.
Through the chair.
Yes.
It just begs the question because Orange and Rockland are larger counties with
Yep.
larger caseloads and bigger departments, and it just piqued my curiosity. And I think our legislative council stated that it might be tied in to the judges and that would set the salary.
Correct.
Yeah, it's definitely tied into the county court judge. They have to have the same salary,
Right.
both county court judge and the DA's office. Legislative.
Didn't it also state that it was under $100,000, that's why it was reflective, or 100,000 people in the county, that's why it was based, that salary was based?
No, the 100,000, I don't,
That doesn't make
That,
sense.
No,
that's,
it's if-
but they had it stipulated, I think, in last
if the
month's
county
backup.
has less than 100,000 people, we don't have to have a full-time district attorney from what I recall. But we do have a full-time district attorney, but that would take some work to eliminate a full-time district attorney, which I don't think is the way we want to go.
No, I was just looking at the numbers of what it said.
Yeah, I mean, that would make it a part-time position and could lower the salary, obviously, I think. I mean, I'm just speaking from what I remember in the past. But I guess we can look into that as well.
No, I think we need a full-time district attorney. I'm not asking for that.
It is a considerable amount, and,
Only a couple thousand more.
yeah, considering what, I mean, I hate to look at Westchester, but it's 10 times the size of our county, and it's only slightly more for the position, but it is what it is, and we have to pay our bills, and this is what the state tells us that the district attorney's salary must be. Any other questions or comments? I'll make a motion to move it to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 7 is the approval of budgetary amendment for the Department of Public Works. Close out various capital projects that were transferred to the capital projects reserves for future projects. Also reviewed in physical services. Great work by our DPW department, saving some taxpayer dollars that we're going to recoup and bring back to the budget in the amount of $9,671.96. Again, savings to the taxpayers, and we'll use it on a future project when necessary. Questions or comments? I'll make a motion to move it to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 8 is the approval of budgetary transfer, fund transfer for current status of an IT system specialist, also reviewed in personnel earlier this month. We're going to cover the costs by moving some money around, zero fiscal impact, putting money in the correct appropriate categories to pay for this new position. Any discussion? Any questions? Pretty straightforward. I think this is a great thing for Putnam County, and I'll make a motion to move it to the full.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Yes. Item number 9 is a fund transfer for IT to establish a GIS tech part-time position and assistant funding GIS aid full-time position. This is also reviewed in personnel, again, earlier this month. We're going to move some money around. It's going to create a little bit of a fiscal impact in 2024 in the amount of $26,474.
No, savings.
Oh, savings,
Savings.
I'm sorry. In parentheses, I should have known that. There is a savings in 2024 of $26,474. In 2025, potential savings is $43,371. Creates this new position. Any discussion? Questions? Legislator Sage.
Just to be clear, item number 8 and item number 9 are two separate positions, two separate people.
That's
Because
correct.
I had someone ask me about that, and I know it's two separate positions, so yeah, so I just wanted to be clear and state that in public. It's two different positions.
This is what Director Lynon was talking about.
Yes.
This individual was a temp or started with the pilot. He got his cybersecurity certificate, and in good faith, we are moving forward to making him full-time.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry.
I'm deferred.
No, thank you. And the other position is a longtime employee who's just retired, and she's agreed to come back and give us her expertise on a part-time basis moving forward.
And I think that's why you see the brackets, because now they're gonna, when they hire the new person, that person's not gonna make what this other individual made.
Gotcha. Good, great savings for Putnam as well. Legislator Elner, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I do not.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I'll make a motion to move it to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 10 is an FYI, the 2024 guardrail and property damage table report. It's in front of us, if anybody has any questions or comments. Just a couple of items that were added. Okay. And just an FYI. Moving on to other business, item number 11. I'd like to make a motion to add an item to the agenda, the creation of the Rescue Task Force. This will be item number 11A. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the discussion, I guess, started a couple nights ago in protective services. So we have this interesting concept of creating a rescue task force that would work in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, and I know there was a bunch of questions out there. Legislator Mastrino, would you like to start?
Yes, this came before us 2 nights ago in the Protective Service Committee. The resolution appears to be somewhat vague, and we needed some clarification, and we needed the resources of risk management and the law department and yourself, Mike, to weigh in on all the particulars. What this resolution is, it really just speaks to the creation of the task force. And although it seems to need some revisions and updating before we are ready to actually consider it, it has to be said that this is the process for consideration. which distinguishes it very differently from the ERT team, which was never approved by the legislature. So we need to review, and we will tonight, the particulars of what necessitates this to reach fruition, and whether or not we need intermunicipal agreements, what our insurance risks or benefits may be, or how this is all going to go down seamlessly. The essence of what is being created is very important because it allows law enforcement in case of emergencies or disasters to go in and do what they have to do while the first responders tend to any potential injuries or catastrophes that might occur. So where I am, I'll speak for myself, very supportive of this endeavor, realizing, but it wasn't incorrectly stated that the money was already encumbered for this. That is not the case. And the Homeland Security grant, which the sheriff, which was under the umbrella, the ERT team was under the umbrella of, in actuality is a grant that came to the office of the sheriff, not at Al. So that really needs to be clear. That being said, I can thank everyone for coming tonight so we could get this going and we could work towards a common goal for all of us. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis, if you could, can you talk to the funding component of this proposed?
Well, that's the thing, based on just what I have in front of me. Well, let me say this. I mean, if there's going to be volunteers, I'll defer obviously to Mr. Bruno, but there's going to be obviously insurance that would be incurred. It's talking about the acquisition of equipment. It's talking about personnel costs. I'm assuming, and I have to talk to Commissioner Lipton when he gets back. If that's considered, overtime, so and the other thing is that when they reference, that this is the Homeland Security grant, I mean, we have the SHIP grant, we have a SIG grant, so I don't know yet which bucket of money Commissioner Lipton is looking into.
Yeah, and we acknowledge that it's
Yes.
very vague. We do acknowledge, and I think we have to start off by asking the law department if this resolution was reviewed by law. So Commissioner Lipton is out of town, so he wasn't here to address some of these pertinent questions at the meeting, but we're not even clear on who wrote the resolution, so maybe John can answer that.
Why don't we
Dan?
approach so you can hear us a little bit better. Good evening. You're good.
Sure.
You may sit.
Good evening.
You just pull another chair up.
Yeah,
So
sure.
we only have 3 or 4.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming out tonight.
Sure. Chairman Castellano, ladies and gentlemen of the board, council. We're here, certain questions were posed, and
Want to shut that mic off?
Maybe shut that one
It's one of these two
off. How about that one, Amy?
Somebody's filming. Try it. Oh,
There you go.
That was
phone's
mine.
ringing.
That wasn't me.
certain questions were posed to us for research and review and to look into and provide answers. Specifically, a question was posed as to whether the resolution had been reviewed and approved by our department. Second question, whether an intermunicipal agreement is needed for this rescue task force proposed by Commissioner Lipton. Legislator Elner then asked that we address if events have to take place in a particular sequential fashion in order to have this addressed and to facilitate the creation of this proposed task force. Our offices did have the opportunity to research the issues. We provided a memo earlier today to Legislator Elner and the board on the latter issue. And on the former issues, my colleague and Daniel Rabo, who I believe most of you know, we are prepared to address those additional questions. So why don't we take them in order, and Dan, if you could speak on those, and I'll supplement as needed.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So the law department was asked to address whether there were specific procedures that needed to happen when adopting this resolution and forming this team. The general municipal law permits the legislature to create this specialized team. That would be 209-BB. Outside of creating a resolution subsequent to a public hearing, there are no other parameters for the legislature to create this team. We were asked about whether an intermunicipal agreement is required. My review of the law, both state law and Putnam County Code, there is no requirement for an intermunicipal agreement to be here, although the legislatures may find it appropriate. But there is no requirement for that agreement, and there is no procedure in creating this task force. Now, once this task force is created, general municipal law also permits those municipalities who are providing volunteers to then extend their insurance to include those members who are now part of the specialized team. That does not require the legislature in their resolution, our resolution, to include that. That would be the municipalities who are providing the volunteers.
Okay. Let's say, Elner.
Question, Dan, hello, welcome, and also to Mr. Bruno. With each entity, towns, et cetera, we're just calling them entities providing insurance, do they have to list the county as an additional insured on their policies?
They
I would
would.
defer.
On the certificate of insurance, we'd ask the volunteer to have their municipality and/or town to add the county as an additional insured for protective measures. Most volunteers will be covered under GML 207A, which is the firefighter equivalent of workers' comp. Police, any police officers or sheriffs would be covered under 207C. So we would ask, as Dan had mentioned, we'd ask them to extend their courtesy, their insurance, to add us as an additional insured to protect us. I'm not going to say that won't be difficult to obtain. I think in some municipalities will be easy. Some might give us a challenge, and then we just have to address that as appropriate.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Through the chair, could I
Please.
just expand on, for where Legislator Elner is asking about the insurance coverage. This particular team is created under a pretty unique provision, a section of the municipal law that includes a provision that the members of the team have to indemnify and hold harmless the county, the municipality that uses them, as long as they are under contract. So if town or the county were to contract with this team for services, then they would be required, the members of those teams were required to indemnify and hold harmless. So while insurance is great, and the members of the team are going to want insurance from, I think, and I'll defer to the law department and our risk manager, but I think from the county's risk management perspective, as long as that contract is in place, it kind of leaves the county off the hook.
A hold harmless would be appropriate. You are correct. I know Anna in the law office and I work on a lot of hold harmlesses when situations like this arise, on a lesser value, of course. But yeah, that's absolutely true. A hold harmless would be presented on top of, you'd almost have a double protection, but yeah.
But it's not, just through the chair, it's not a written hold harmless that's required, it's statutory. It's by operation of law, as long as that contract is in place. So in terms of sequence, after the team is in place and formed, I think it would behoove the county and the municipalities that are using it to enter into these written contracts with the team so that they can invoke that liability protection.
That actually makes sense. Yes, that actually makes sense.
Well, I guess, where do we go from here is going to be my question.
I would respectfully request that we bring it back to protective so that Commissioner Lipton can weigh in and that we can clean up the resolution and have it reviewed by law appropriately and sort of dot our i's and cross our t's. I mean, have you seen this under your review?
I was going to address that.
We're not sure that it was.
Yes, I had spoken with Anna Diaz of our offices about that. She had conversations with Bob Lipton about it. She had done a review of it. There had been some discourse back and forth. But in light of these concerns, I think it would be appropriate for the two of them to continue their discussions, perhaps fine tune it, address some of the concerns that you've raised. And I think, so the short answer to the question, it has been reviewed, but I think it needs additional review.
Okay.
There's some typos in it
I
as well.
saw that, yes.
Legislator Crowell?
So I thank you, Legislator Nasarino, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And I appreciate the team coming together and all the hard work everybody's put in. This particular grant, I know I've spoken to both Commissioner Lipton and Matt Bruno in regards to this, and the line items also are specific in what they can be used for. And we still owe, and this was a question I had the other day, we still owe 2 other entities money that you have been requested for, right, out of this grant, both Carmel and Kent, and we have not paid them yet. So I also wanted to discuss the fact that before we took any money out of this grant to form this team and supply this team, that we had to pay off our debt.
That's incorrect.
That we actually paid,
Oh, we did pay them?
we paid Carmel, I don't have the number in front of me, but,
$14,375.
So it was,
so what, they were paid through December 31st of '23.
December 31st, but they haven't been paid for the first quarter of this year.
Because that's, at this point, that's not.
It's dissolved.
It's dissolved, all right.
But there were still remaining hours, weren't there, that you guys were requested?
From 2023.
From 2024, there were still remaining hours that were put into your department and requested from both departments, and I can send them to you. But there are still outstanding balances to both departments, and I've spoken.
For quarter 1, 2024?
2024. It wasn't dissolved at that
But we would
point.
take,
It wasn't dissolved as of January 2024.
Would this be the same budget
Yes,
line
it
for
is.
both?
It's-
I'm asking,
oh, sorry.
let's ask the commissioner, or if you don't, Sheriff, you have an answer to that?
I hate to interrupt, but we're talking about 2 different grants. The grant for the Rescue Task Force, the funding that's available for that comes from the Bureau of Emergency Services.
Yes.
The monies utilized for the previously constructed emergency response team is a different grant. It's 2 different funding sources, they're not the same. And Legislator Nasrino is correct, and Commissioner Lewis, Carmel was paid through December 2023 through the 31st. The team was disbanded as per the county executive's memorandum of December 4th at 10:33 a.m. on the 2023. So there are no funds at this point that would reimburse any of the other agencies.
Okay. Legislator Elmer?
Because we have Dan and John here, if you would be so kind as to share with everybody your recommended sequence of events so we get this right. Because I can speak for myself, but I think the consensus is we want to do this, and we just want to make sure our i's are dotted, t's are crossed, and we execute it properly.
Totally understandable, and we anticipated that question. Dan, if you
Yeah.
feel that.
I believe it's appropriate to create the team, then at that time, reach out to the municipalities so that they may then use the resolution that would adopt the team as the basis for their resolutions, and then in the meantime, we can, those municipalities who would move forward with extending their insurance, so long as risk approves, we can enter into agreements with those municipalities as we deem appropriate.
The continuation, so when you finalize the resolution for the legislature to vote on, would there be some clause that deployment will not take place until such time, I see Matt shaking his head yes, until all the other items have been satisfied?
Yes, that would be appropriate.
Thank you.
You may have that.
Legislator Mastrano?
Yeah, this is just a first step, and first necessary step in the process. So until the legislature approves it, we cannot go forward with engaging with the other towns. So this is the first step, and then that will come afterwards, so that they can engage and get this up and running. It was stated at the protective meeting that they have some leaders, but not volunteers in the respective towns. I think it's Carmel, Kent, and Phillipstown. So that's yet to come. If there's any monies that are to be expended, that would also come before the legislature to be approved. So nothing is going to happen. That's the sequence. This just enables us by creation to move forward. That's the bottom line here.
I know there was some discussion the other night where they were talking about zones, et cetera, but do you guys have any idea of what you foresee this looking like? I mean, is it gonna be 12 people in zone A, B, and C, or
Well,
how does that work?
I'm not that savvy in all of it, but we talk about this at the Fire Advisory Board, and they have their fire zones, how they deploy and their municipal aid and how things are done. So I think when we have Rob Lipton here next month, we'll be able to clearly define all those questions.
Fair enough. Any other questions or comments? Rob?
If I may, through the chair, ask a question of Dan and John. The wording in 209BB is kind of unusual, where it speaks to the public hearing. And Dan, I heard you say the public hearing before the resolution. And not to put you on the spot, but if you're sure about that, that's fine. I mean, typically, the legislature doesn't hold a public hearing before passing a resolution, except when it's explicitly worded that way, like in ag district, agricultural district, inclusion approvals, or budget hearing, things like that. Typically, like in the case of a local law, we pass the resolution and then the county executive holds the public hearing before he signs it. I don't know if there's some other provision in general municipal law that is incorporated into this, but as part of where you're doing this, when you're doing your research into it, I didn't have a chance to look into it myself. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Sure. But I think it would be helpful to know from the law department your view as to whether or not we should be holding a public hearing before we vote on the resolution, or after the legislature presumably passes it, whether it will be the county executive that holds the public hearing.
Absolutely.
The wording is by resolution after a public hearing, the governing body of each county is authorized to establish the team. It's not clear to me whether that means that the legislature has to hold the hearing first, or whether we can pass the resolution and then they hold a public hearing and then the county executive can sign the resolution.
Absolutely. My initial reading was, as I said earlier, that I believe the resolution would be after the public hearing, but I understand what you're saying, and I will certainly look into that and get back to the legislature, get back to you, Rob, and clarify that. Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I'll make a motion to table this back to Protective Services. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another item on for other business. I'll call this item 11B. It's to amend the capital projects for the correction facilities, the boiler replacement. I'll make a motion to add it to our agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, you want to talk about this one as well?
Sure. I met with Tommy and Joe yesterday, I'm sorry. And they brought to my attention that the original request for the boiler project, which I believe was $500,000 per the capital plan, after they did their bid and cost analysis, it's going to be $130,000 more. However, on the flip side, there's budgetary savings on the which one was that again? I'm sorry. On the life safety, I apologize. So you have the budgetary savings on the life safety. You got the boiler project that's over the original estimate, so that's a budget neutral. So that's why you see the increase and the decrease. In addition, the gate improvements, same thing. They came in higher than originally budgeted. But we're going to take that $125,000 from the sheriff's school safety ARPA project. We vet this out with our ARPA consultant, and this is ARPA compliant. So it is appropriate use of funds, so zero fiscal impact.
So,
How much was the decrease from the school safety?
125,000.
thank you. But that was the way, just want to make sure, how was that affected, that we decreased there, or just was not necessary, the 125?
For the school safety?
Yeah.
I'll defer to the sheriff, but what I will say is that the school, you know, the sheriff has been reaching out, and
Unfortunately, no response.
And, you know, and as I've said on record numerous times, we have to really demonstrate, you know, spending this money. I think it's a small amount of the $2 million that's still, you know, in that line. And again, we came up with backup plans, if you want to say, to spend this money, so it's appropriate use.
And we know that Carmel just passed Proposition number 2 for $11+ million for a school safety plan under their own budget. So
Right, so they put
it
the
wasn't that
version,
because of lack of trying on the county's end to try to utilize those ARPA funds, but that's just,
so the
they
school
went-
district put on the backs of taxpayers $11.4 million, which includes interest, when $2 million
For a
were
bond.
available through the county, specifically through the sheriff's office. Thank you, Sheriff. I just wish the school districts would have listened.
Sheriff McConnell, do you want to add anything to this thing, and is it
We still
appropriate?
have, we have identified a number, working with Director Tully and Commissioner Lewis, we still, we've identified a number of technology-based programs that will be utilized for school safety. Some are physical programs in nature in terms of providing, we call them buckets, but they're for lockdowns. The students get confined, they'll have meals, they'll have first aid, there's water in these items for about 25 people, which seems to be the norm of an average classroom size. So we'll be providing the schools with that, and we know pretty much how much we'll spend, and then we'll utilize the remaining funds for necessary physical improvements throughout the county, working with the commissioner and the director.
Okay, thank you. Legislator Crowley.
Well, I sent out the memo to have an update on that for next month on protective services. So if that could be done, Legislator Nasarino or addressed.
well, we're discussing it now, so
I understand, I'd like to hear what the rest of the $2 million is going to be allocated for. A little bit more specific, that would be fantastic.
you want to embellish on that now that we're on the topic?
So if we can go back to this agenda item, is there any other discussion on this other business that we have in front of us tonight? With that, I'll make a motion to move it to the full. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? That will be you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll verify that.